Hey everyone, just wanted to give you a quick update. Curse of the White Knight #2 is coming out this week. I think it's this week anyway. And my Kickstarter for my graphic novel called Bloody Hell is still going. There's just about a little over a week left, or possibly even less, depending on when this comes out. So it might be your last chance to get in on that. There's, as of right now, there's one spot left open for the reward tier to be a guest host on BATTASS. So if that's something that you're into, well, you better snatch that up. Anyway, yeah, thanks again for all your support. It's doing really well. We passed $20,000 last weekend, and it's, it's been really, really great. So thank you to everybody. And if you want to check it out, see what all the fuss is about, you can head over to bloodyhell.com, BLOODYHEL1L.com. All right, thanks, guys.
I am the night. I am
Hey everyone, welcome again to the BATTASS podcast, the Batman the Animated Series show podcast, where we talk about Batman the Animated Series. My name is Clay McCormick, and with me is
Sean Murphy, your co-host.
And today we'll be talking about two episodes, Moon of the Wolf and Day of the Samurai. And last episode, Sean, you mentioned that you had a interesting Batman story to tell, but maybe we'll save that to the end of the episode. I
totally forgot about that. But yeah, all right. Well,
yeah, I probably shouldn't have brought it up.
No. It stays in. It's fine. I'm happy to tell it. Do you want me to just tell it now?
Sure, why not?
Okay. I'm living in L.A. I'm 26, I think. And I'm dating a girl. I'm going to try not to say the actor's name, or if I do, Clay will have to bleep it. And she happens to be a stripper. I'm not a strip club guy, or I wasn't at the time. And she was a neighbor, and I know it's a bad idea to get mixed up with the neighbors, but whatever. One thing led to another, and we had a very casual relationship. And one time we were getting into it, and it turns out she tells me she was went on a date with this famous actor who played Batman. And I was totally struck by it, like not threatened at all, very enthusiastic, of course. Like, this is amazing. What's he like? How'd you meet? Blah, blah, blah. And yeah, the other reason I don't want to say his name is I don't know if he was married with kids at the time or whatever, and you don't need to know. Anyway, so we were getting into it at one point, and we were in her apartment, and phone rings, and I happened to look over at the phone because I was kind of hoping it was Batman, and it was. So I stopped, and I'm like, "Hey, I think it sounds like it's important. You need to take it." She's like, "What do you mean? We're busy right now." I'm like, "I know. Normally, it would." I wouldn't be all about stopping if you to talk to another dude, but come on, this is Batman. She's like, "Are you crazy?" I'm like, "Seriously, pick up the phone." And I grab the phone and I answer it for her, and I hand her the phone, and I'm,
oh boy.
She's talking to this guy, and I hear his voice. I'm geeking out, and I'm debating if I'm supposed to yell out something from the movie, which I can't say which one it was. She talks to him for a while, and he seemed like he was really interested in her. And I don't know if he knew she was poor like me, or how they met, or if he knew that she was an exotic dancer or whatever. And but he seemed very interested in hanging out with her. And yeah, I don't know. I didn't do anything because I just respect him too much to blurt out something stupid while I'm mid-coital with this girl that he wants to hook up with. But you
mean you respected him enough to have her answer the phone while it was happening, but not to blurt something out. Good on you.
I might have plugged her a few extra times while she was talking to Batman, just to feel like I was better than Batman. But yeah, it was a fine phone call, and she finished up and hung up, and I was just like, "Oh man, that's great. Are you guys gonna go out?" And she's like, "Aren't you and I busy doing something right now?" I'm like, "Screw that. I want to know how you guys met and what's it like. After you guys go out, I want to know all the details." We had that kind of friendship, or whatever friendship, whatever
and
it was.
That was the last time you ever went out with that woman. Anyway,
so I'm not gonna say the name here, but Clay does know who this is, and he was shocked.
I was.
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I'll never think about Burt Ward the same way. Yeah, wow. But back to our discussion about this children's show.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I remember her talking to this guy, and I had my face buried in her massive fake tits, and it was amazing listening to Batman try to woo her.
Listen, we've already covered hentai, and we've already covered furries, so I guess this is just the next thing on the list.
Yeah. Okay, let's do this right.
The next thing on our list is an episode called Moon of the Wolf. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about that.
Oh, we got to do this before the break? Holy shit, this is a great opening. Sorry.
That's okay. Moon of the Wolf, directed by Dick Seabass, written by Len Wein. And in this episode, Batman investigates the appearance of a werewolf-like creature in Gotham, not realizing that the monster happens to be one of Bruce Wayne's associates, Anthony Romulus, ex-Olympic champion. Behind the scheme is twisted chemist Professor Milo. Note, based on the comic story of the same name by writer Len Wein with art by Neil Adams from Batman 255, April 1974. I feel like this goes on the list of episodes I hope were better in the comic, or stories I hope were better in the comic.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't really... Well, first of all, they brought back that stupid Professor Milo guy from that terrible Catwoman episode.
Yeah. The guy with the bowl cut.
Yeah, who looks like Roger Klotz, is that his name, from Doug? He looks like his brother or something.
Dude, yeah, he looks like an older version of Doug. I was going to say the same thing. That's so funny. I didn't know if that joke would land with you, so kudos.
He's not a very compelling villain, and honestly, I don't even really know what the scheme was, aside from pumping up this rich guy with half steroids and half
wolf,
Timberwolf estrogen, which I guess turns you into a werewolf, which I never knew.
Was it estrogen? Is that right? Was it actually estrogen?
Yeah, he said it was steroids and Timberwolf estrogen.
All right, well, yeah, some feminism for you.
Yeah. I mean, sure. But like, I don't. The whole thing starts with the wolf attacking this random zoo guard.
Yeah,
and he doesn't really play a big part. They just attack him because I'm not even totally sure why they attack him.
Right.
But I'll be completely honest with you. I kind of zoned out about halfway through this episode.
Yeah, no,
because it wasn't really landing with me.
They lost me at werewolfism.
Yeah,
an actual medical term.
I do have to give Batman credit because he has I have to give him credit and then take credit away. I have to give him credit because he has no qualms whatsoever about just straight up punching a werewolf in the mouth. First thing. But then later on, you find out that he just thought it was a really convincing mask.
Right. Yeah. No, this. All right. So when I was watching it, I thought how you and I were talking recently about, are there any ones as far as ratings go? And as I turned this on, I think Moon of the Wolf is definitely a 1.
Yeah.
Not to skip to the end, but the soundtrack, that's like air guitar thing that was just annoying after a while. It had boring dialogue, choppy animation. It was a by the numbers, dumb, stupid werewolf story. Yeah, like I said, werewolfism. And again, like Bullock was in this episode for some reason, but there was literally no reason for him to be in it at all.
Right.
To me, this felt like it should have been a Clayface episode because you have this
interesting
performer who's looking to beat the odds and jack up in some way. And yeah, I mean, if you like Clayface, just go to a Clayface episode. Like, there's really no episode to watch this one.
Would you then have Clayface turn into a werewolf?
No, all I meant was like Matt Hagen needing an edge, and he takes some kind of a drug to give him the edge, basically, is what I meant.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But the other thing I thought to fix this was, I thought this would be an interesting Man-Bat story, because you already have Man-Bat introduced as this person that can change from a human being into a bat. Why not make this guy experimenting with Man-Bat, morphing or whatever the hell you call it, and have this be the next evolution? You have like a man-wolf or whatever. Like, you could have sort of gone with the lore that already existed in Batman and gone the next step.
Or, at the very least, At the very least, we said the same thing in the last episode with the Tiger episode. At the very least, why don't they make it the same guy from Tiger?
Yeah. Oh my God, you're right.
The Catwoman episode that Dr. Milo is from, had nothing to do with werewolves or turning people into animals or anything. The guy in the literal last episode, his whole thing was turning people into animals. So I don't know why they went and dragged this guy out.
Right. And they did like 2 furry episodes almost back to back, basically. Mm-hmm. 2 anthropomorphized animal stories all in a row. And so let's talk about Lin Wayne for a second.
Sure.
He was the one that invented Wolverine, correct?
Yes.
Did he invent the Punisher as well? Am I getting that wrong?
Let me check real quick. Does not look. No, he did not create the Punisher, but he did create Swamp Thing. He co-created Swamp Thing.
Okay, cool. And he passed away recently. Is that true?
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Okay, cool. Yeah. This felt like a '70s story. Like even with my. Like, I'm not a big horror guy. You know this about me. But I tried to put on my best John Carpenter goggles to be like, all right, I'm going to enjoy this. I'm not into horror, but it doesn't mean that a werewolf episode can't be good. I still could not get into this.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the reasons... So, I am a big horror guy, and I couldn't get into it either. And
yes.
I think part of it is because, I think Batman can work in horror stories. I just don't think they leaned into it here. Like, it wasn't, right. There's a difference between really leaning into a horror story and making it, okay, this is a horror Batman story, and making a story that just happens to have a werewolf in it. This is just a story that happens to have a werewolf in it. It's not like there's no horror elements to it or anything, really. It's just sort of like, yeah, there's a werewolf in this kind of run-of-the-mill crime story.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't have a whole lot to say about this one. I hated this episode as a kid. I still don't like it now. As soon as you mentioned this being the next one, I thought like, oh great, I had to watch that one again.
Yeah, the best thing I'll say about it is I thought the werewolf transformation animation was kind of cool.
Right.
The first time where he turns back into the human, it had kind of some cool movement to it as far as him, the body changing and stuff. But overall, I thought the animation was pretty bad. It was, like you said, it was choppy. Yeah. There was some really weird, like, wide shot movements that seemed really stiff and slow. Like, at the beginning, when the wolf is chasing down the security guard, they pull to this, like, wide shot. And you see the wolf just like casually jumping across the frame and then kind of taking a right and then casually jumping across this bridge chasing the guy. Yeah. And it looked really cheap and stiff, and it wasn't great.
Right. Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, how would you so I mentioned making this a Man-Bat episode or like a Clayface episode. Yeah. How would you fix this episode?
I would do the opposite. I would say I would lean into the horror stuff. I would just go, if you're going to do a werewolf, just go full Castlevania with it or something. Like make it worthy of putting a werewolf into it. Right. I don't have a problem with werewolves in general. I just think if you're going to do a horror story, do a horror story. Right. Don't pussyfoot around it.
I was going to ask you if you've ever drawn a werewolf story in a comic before.
I have, yes. One of the first comics that I did out of college was a werewolf story. It was fine. It's not my best work. I enjoyed it. Drawing werewolves is fun, but it's not something that I look back on that I would want to show a lot of people, unfortunately.
Yeah. Did you have a way to draw werewolves that you tried to make unique?
Honestly, I don't really know. I kind of based my werewolf design off of Bram Stoker's Dracula a little bit, right. When that kind of weird like snub nose werewolf that he turns into in that movie. Mm-hmm. I tried to do it a little bit differently. But I didn't try to reinvent the wheel or anything.
Right. I did a.
Why do you ask?
I was just curious. I did a werewolf story, One of my first gigs coming out of college, actually. I just moved to LA, and I got a gig with Dark Horse called fuck. Shit, I can't think of it right now. But it was written by this writer named Jason Aaron, and it was a Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Crush. It was called Crush, that's right. Crush. And it was part of Rocket Comics, which was a line that Dark Horse was trying to do at the time. I was happy to take the work, and it paid pretty well, and I needed the money, and blah, blah, blah. But I remember drawing it and trying to... There was a panel description where these nerds, like these geeky nerds in high school, are the ones that turned into werewolves. So you have a big reveal of these werewolves, but they're wearing, like, Hawaiian shirts and nerdy flip-flops. And I remember this panel. So I didn't know if I was supposed to draw it, like, legit scary, but they were also nerds. And keep in mind, like, he wanted the werewolves to still be wearing glasses and stuff like that. So I drew it kind of hokey because I thought it was supposed to be hokey. And once we finished the series, he called me because I guess Fox was interested in it, but I never heard anything back from that. And he was talking about how, you know, happy he was with the book and all that stuff. And he was like, the only thing I don't like is how nerdy you drew the werewolves. And I'm like, you told me to draw them nerdy. He's like, well, I wanted them nerdy scary, not nerdy. Like, what the fuck does that mean, dude? And he's like, do you think they're going to option this at Fox? I'm really excited. I'm like, no, I wouldn't buy this. Yeah.
Nerdy.
I made the mistake of being like way too honest with him, and we haven't really spoken since.
No. And I mean, he just, you know, unfortunately floated off into obscurity, you know? It's the last the comics world ever heard of Jason Aaron.
Yeah.
Yeah, nerdy scary. I don't even know what nerdy scary would really be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like that's a good name for an anthology comic, like a bunch of horror stories under the title Nerdy Scary, and see what people come up with.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I had a writer once say, I need this girl to be sexy dangerous, not dangerous sexy.
Yeah.
To this day, I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, that sounds like a character description written by a guy. That's what that sounds like.
That's definitely what it was, yeah.
Have you ever seen that... I think it's a Twitter account of just the way women characters are described in movie scripts, and it's like crowdsourced from all these actresses who go out for parts and stuff.
Yeah, I've seen stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like every one of them is always like hot, but not too hot, but also smart, and like just these really ridiculous base level, ways of describing a female character that are, you know. I understand why they get mad about it because it's pretty insulting.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, my favorite part of this episode is the scene where Batman is just like being bored watching National Geographic about wolves, while Alfred fixes the Batmobile.
So yeah,
Batman just jumps into the car before he's even done and is just like zooms off.
Yeah, like I guess you don't need this carburetor installed, Bruce.
Yeah, let me just. You don't need the radiator cap or anything. Just feel free to take off. Is this the first time that we've seen Alfred actually like doing mechanical work on the car?
I think it might be.
Yeah, like because I now the thing that's interesting to me is the Alfred from this show doing work on the Batmobile? Is that the first time ever that Alfred is shown as doing work on the Batmobile, like that he's more than just a butler?
Yeah. Good question. I didn't think to research that. That was actually the scene I wanted to draw, was Alfred fixing the Batmobile.
Yeah, that seems right up your alley.
What would you draw?
I'll be honest with you, Batman fighting a werewolf would be pretty fun to draw, I think. I think it's funny that Neil Adams did this in the comic because this feels like a Bernie Wrightson story 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson co-created Swamp Thing. He was all about the gothic horror stuff and the, monster tradition in comics, and this would have been a fantastic Bernie Wrightson story. Yeah. I'm actually looking at it right now, and it does feel kind of... It's definitely Neil Adams, but it does have a bit of a Bernie Wrightson feel to it.
Right, yeah. I could see that. I mean, what is it? Did we already talk about horror stories in general and why you like them? Did we get into this yet?
I don't know if we have, actually. I don't know if we've ever really gotten into that.
Do you, well, your favorite movie is The Thing in Ghostbusters, correct?
Yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah, short answer, yes.
Did you grow up on horror movies? Did you have somebody, like parents were introducing you to them, or like an older brother, older friend or something?
When I was really young, my aunt babysat me for like a few years, and she had all of her kids were older than I was. Her youngest son was about 6 years older than I was, so I came to most of that stuff through hanging out with them. But yeah, I Ghostbusters, Rocky, all that core 80s stuff came from that.
Do you remember your first horror movie?
First horror movie? First proper horror movie. I don't. I do have a memory of going over to somebody's house when I was young, and they were watching one of the Friday the 13th. No, sorry, Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And there was a scene where Freddy, this girl's in a at the hospital, and Freddy shows up, and he's as the nurse, and he's, instead of blades on his fingers, he's got syringes, and I thought that was like the scariest shit I've ever seen in my life. But I did find out recently. When I say find out, I mean like rediscover. Have you seen Monster Squad?
Oh yeah, of course.
So I watched Monster Squad a lot when I was younger, and then I didn't watch it for maybe like 25 years. I just fell off my radar or whatever. Then it came out on DVD, and I was like, oh, I love that movie. I'm gonna, I grabbed it on DVD, and I watched it, and it floored me, because basically everything that I like is in that movie. Like, that's like the genesis of everything that I like.
Oh, I see.
Whether it's the, Universal monster type stuff, or the group of the team that comes together to try and, accomplish a mission or XYZ. All of this stuff, like the 80s kind of horror stuff, all of it is like synthesized into that movie.
Right.
And I was very shocked to find that out, because I had never put the pieces together like that before.
Yeah. No, it's the wellspring from which you flow, as Conan would say.
Yeah.
I think the first horror movie I saw was The Blob, like the late 80s version. Yeah. I remember seeing it in a drive-in movie theater in New Hampshire. It still exists. There's one in Wares Beach that has 4 screens. And I remember seeing it, and my parents normally wouldn't have let me watch it, but, you can't move the car, so we're just sort of stuck watching it. And I remember it really freaked me out, but there's something about it, too. And I remember rewatching it recently, and I've only seen it once, but I can't believe how many scenes I actually recall pretty vividly having seen it again recently.
Yeah.
Like, I remember the whole thing where, like, the outcast of the school was this, like, hair metal guy with a motorcycle, and then like the good guy was the jock, but he got taken up by the blob first or something. I don't know, something like that. But I love the idea that the punk kid was supposed to be the bad guy, but he actually ended up being the hero of the story in the end.
Right. Yeah. Well, actually, Monster Squad has kind of a similar thing where there's a I guess he was not a villain, but he's kind of a cool punk older kid who ends up hanging out with a bunch of these young kids to take down. He's hanging out because he wants to see the kid's sisters naked, but that's, neither here nor there. And he ends up becoming a very integral part of the team. Yeah,
but the call and the call to action is there. I mean, yeah, you might be a little bit on the wild side, kind of an anti-hero, but when push comes to shove, man, you've got that sweet switchblade that looks like a comb or whatever.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. Yeah,
a nice like early '80s mullet and a don't give a shit attitude. Yep. You can be the hero of this movie.
And he has the best line in the movie when he's going off to fight the 3 brides of Dracula, and they tell him to stop or something, and he just turns around and says, "I'm part of the goddamn club, aren't I?" And then he just I stood up and I clapped when I saw that again after watching it, not watching it for so many years.
Oh, I thought you did that the first time you saw it. Like you stood up, Clay, age 7, stood up and slow clapped in the theater.
Yes. Excellent writing. The horror stuff. I don't know why. I don't know why I find it. It's kind of the genre I prefer. It's I think it's just I find it more expressive, and I think you can go through so many different ranges of emotion under the horror banner. You can do drama, you can do comedy, you can do just straight scary stuff. It kind of covers everything in a way, and it's always full of like interesting high concept. Well, not always, but it tends to be full of like interesting high concept ideas to put a spin on some stuff. So yeah, it's always something that I've just found really engaging.
If it's done well, I agree. But I mean, I feel like a lot of film kids in college and people starting out, they usually gravitate towards horror because the bar is set pretty low to do a pretty good horror. There's so much bad horror out there that if you can do like a mediocre one, then good for you. You don't need a lot of budget. You can shoot it kind of wherever. You get some blonde girl who's good at screaming.
Right.
I mean, I find that horror tends to trap a lot of crappy young filmmakers, which gives the genre a bad name. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword about how it's so easy to do it. Because it's so easy to do it. So then, a lot of people who are not very good at their job can do it.
Yeah.
It's also really easy to do it in that people who are really good at their job can do it and do it well and use that as a stepping stone. Like Sam Raimi,
right?
One of the he's I don't know how I would describe him at this point. He's a very popular director anyway. Started off doing The Evil Dead, which is a nothing budget movie that they shot in a cabin in Tennessee or whatever, and is one of the at the time was one of the scariest movies to come out around that time, and it cost like $30.
Wow, yeah, it is amazing when you get a good one. Like I remember, I'm not a horror guy at all, but when I saw the movie Saw for the first time, or The Ring, or a lot of those things, like it is pretty amazing. It's not my thing, but I can definitely see why people like it. In a way, the whole thing about horror is a way of dealing with death. In a way, it makes death less intimidating, less scary if you're able to enjoy it and laugh at it in a way.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, I was just talking to Wes about Hereditary. I don't know if you've seen Hereditary.
No,
no. Hereditary is really kind of skirts this line where, it's really easy to draw horror stuff into the comedy realm because you just end up laughing at the ridiculousness of the situation, and it can be kind of easy to do that. Hereditary does stuff that just makes you feel really uncomfortable because things will happen and your first instinct is to kind of like laugh at it because of the how absurd and intense the thing is, but then when they don't back away from it and it's not played for laughs, you just feel really kind of disturbed at your own kind of reaction because you don't really know how you're supposed to feel, and it just really it's a new feeling that from watching a horror movie that I can't say that I've had before, and it's definitely worth a watch. That movie's something else.
Yeah, I'll have to give it a shot, man.
But anyway, back to Batman.
So, what would you give this episode as a rating? What would you give this episode?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say 1. Something's got to be a 1, and I think this is gonna be it. It's just there's nothing, nothing engaging about it. It doesn't do anything interesting. Half the episode is told through flashback. Just my least favorite kind of flashback, where it's the villain telling someone who already knows all this stuff, just telling them the story they already know out loud because we don't know it, so we have to know it. I hate that kind of flashback.
Right.
And I'm not even totally sure what the plot was.
So there's one scene that did make me laugh out loud. It's towards the beginning. Gordon is in his office at night, and he picks up the phone, and he dials, and Batman walks in and hangs the phone.
He's a real
up
dick
on
in
him.
this episode.
He even doing, man. You didn't know what that phone call was. What if he needed his medication?
Yeah. He even at the beginning, after he saves the guard, he's kind of a dick to him too, where he's like, "You should probably get out of here." Chris.
Yeah, and then later on, Batman is describing that to somebody else that someone got attacked, and he goes, I think it was someone who might have worked for the zoo. It's like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. You literally took 2 seconds and like leaned down. You read his name tag, asshole.
Yeah. He's really got his mind on something else. Like, not even he wants to be dealing with a fucking werewolf at this point, I guess.
Yeah. I wouldn't. I don't blame him. Yeah, so I'll go 1 as well. If there has to be 1, this is definitely a 1, and I'm just happy that we don't have to talk about it anymore.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, I guess that's gonna do it for this episode. Let's take a break, and then we will be back with the next one. All right, we're back. Next episode we're doing is called Day of the Samurai, written by Steve Perry, directed by Bruce W. Timm, and in it, Kyodai Ken kidnaps Kari. Ooh, that's some nice alliteration there. Star pupil of Yoru Sensei, the martial arts instructor who taught both Kyodai and Bruce. The ninja's ransom for her is a scroll that teaches the location of the fabled death touch. So you mentioned this one before because we did the previous episode that had Kyodai Ken in it, and you thought that this one was a lot better. I don't know. I would say 75% of this for me was still pretty boring. But I thought that last fight on the volcano was really cool. I thought the animation was great. I thought that fight on a volcano was better than the entire volcano fight in the third Star Wars prequel. But the rest of it, I don't know. It was fine, I guess. I liked the thing about him knowing who Batman was because of the fighting style. That was cool.
Right.
But yeah, it just seemed like it was, I don't know. It was fine. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely teed this one up as, the first Kyodai Ken episode is not great, but the second part of it kind of makes up for it. I think this one was definitely better than the first one. I think I love that there's this 500-year flashback of this, five-fingered death punch that this clan knew about, and no one wanted to share the secret because it was just too dangerous for mankind to know about it or whatever. Yeah. And I love the storytelling element of this volcano in the background. That's kind of like a thematic device that shows the boiling over of all this rage or whatever it is, And I imagine this episode without a volcano, and it's not nearly as good. The fact that they added the volcano, not just to have a nice set piece at the end, but to sort of bolster the storytelling in this, I thought that really went a long way with me. I'm a big fan of like Musashi in the Book of Five Rings, which is like, if you go into samurai culture in Japan, he's kind of like the Robin Hood character of Japanese sword fighters and stuff like that. And the idea that they hid this scroll in one of 1,000 caves, and I thought they handled the flashback in this pretty well. Also, my big beef was that I think the sensei should have known that Bruce was Batman, but he wouldn't have quite said that. I think that, if you fight someone, you can kind of learn who they actually are by their fighting style. I think the sensei should have said something like, hey, can you get your friend Batman to come here and help us out? Wink, wink. And kind of done something like that,
Yeah, I was kind of expecting them to do that at the end when they kind of had that last scene with Sensei and Bruce. I thought they were going to make some sort of wink to him knowing that he was Batman instead of him just being like, yeah, and you tell that Batman, he's a swell guy. Do you get to hang out with him? Because he seems like he's pretty cool. I wish I knew who Batman was, because I'd like to hang out with him socially.
Totally. I agree. And when we got to the finale, I thought about the fire-lit Batman, which you must have fucking loved, of course.
Yeah, well, it's... I thought that stuff was great, and... this was another one where the animation for most of it felt kind of stiff to me, except
it did.
I feel like they stepped it up in the fighting stuff, because the early, like that first scene with Kyodai Ken and Kari, I thought the fighting was a lot better than it was in the last samurai episode, and I believe that was something we both talked about, was how it's an episode that has a lot of fighting in it, and the fighting just looked terrible.
Yeah.
But the regular animation for most of it felt kind of stiff. There were more of those like kind of awkward wide shots where you're watching someone just walk across a room and it doesn't really quite work.
Yeah.
But man, that fight scene at the end was so good.
Yeah.
They were doing like 360 moves in front of this exploding volcano, and like all the karate stuff looked really cool. I thought that stuff was great. They definitely saved saved the good stuff for the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think the animation was a little bit off model, but I thought it looked like it was trying to be the old Superman cartoons. Everyone looked a little bit doughy, but I felt like it still kind of worked. One thing I did notice was the background designs were amazing. Yeah, and I think they probably did all that stuff in studio, but they had Bruce staying in a room with Alfred that had all these like woodcut Japanese prints in it, and the way they rendered Japan, it never told you which city it was in, but it clearly had a different vibe than Gotham did. Like the buildings didn't look deco or anything. If you go back and watch this, I think it's worth paying attention just to the backgrounds, because they did kind of go all out to make this look different, you know? Yeah,
absolutely. And as far as the flashback thing goes, it shocks me that you really like the 500-year-old flashback in a Batman story.
I know 500's too much. I would have gone 300.
Yeah. I think the flashback in this is better than the flashback in the previous episode, because you're actually learning new information. And is not just someone explaining something that the character who is being explained to already knows. And they're doing it in kind of an interesting way. It's kind of a mythic kind of story. If I had to do something different with that, I would have gone over the top with the design, maybe, and made it a little bit more kind of like mythic looking. Maybe lean into Japanese illustration a little bit and make it. I mean, they got to get these episodes out. I understand, but I think that would have been a cool excuse to do something a little bit different there, instead of just using a guy that looks exactly like the sensei. Right.
One thing I thought you would have liked more, and I actually thought that they should have done this throughout the episode, but right at the end, the sensei tells Bruce that Bruce says that Kyodai Ken is a ninja. He's like a lawless ninja without honor or something like that. And his sensei says, no, he was, but Batman is not a ninja. Batman's a samurai. Batman has honor. Batman this, Batman that. Which I thought was great. But I kind of wish the moral of this story was more of that. Like, what if you started out with the story of Batman feeling like he's not much different than some lawless ninja? Yes. And by the end of the story, he realizes that he's someone with honor. And it also kind of mirrors, towards the ends of the fight scene at the volcano, Batman tries to help Kyodai Ken by tossing him a line to bring him back or whatever. And Kyodai Ken just takes the batarang on a rope and just kicks it into the lava, and he bows, and then there's this giant explosion. So he sort of dies with honor. I feel like there was a way to take that and the moral of a story at the very end and sort of lean into that a bit more.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's a really good ad. Would be the stuff at the beginning. If you had Batman feeling like he was in a low place as far morally or honor wise, and thinking he's no better than than a ninja, I think that would have gone a long way. Definitely. Yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame that they didn't. I don't know, maybe if it was a time thing or what, but it's a shame that they didn't have a chance to get into that, because I think that would have made this. If they had done that, that would have made this like a 5 for me, I think. Yeah. Because it's that kind of like thematic storytelling that when they do it in this show, it's excellent, and they had the opportunity. You're right. They had the opportunity, but they just didn't go for it.
Yeah. I think that I give this episode more credit than it deserves, because you're taking Batman out of Gotham, but it still works. Like, they didn't tell you which city in Japan it was. They didn't expand on the world that much. It's it's Japan. Whatever. Who cares? Batman. A lot of places. He's Japan, and here he is in a fighting studio, whatever it is. I feel like that it was handled very well, considering it was sort of a different sort of episode than what we usually get. You know what I mean? I think I give them a lot of points for the attempt, even though I think the animation was bad, even though I think you could make a few tweaks and make this 50% better. yeah, maybe that's why I'm so generous with this episode.
Yeah, I think this one has a lot of potential. That maybe they just left some money on the table, so to speak.
Yeah. For sure.
It seemed, I think by looking at it, it seems like they really put the effort behind. Okay, we're bringing him to Japan, so let's go all out with the backgrounds and make sure that stuff's nice and tight. And then we really need to sell this fight at the end, so let's make sure that stuff looks great.
Yeah.
And sometimes something gets lost in the shuffle, and it's not bad. It's not a bad episode at all.
Yeah.
I think it's it's totally works, and I would be interested to watch this one again because I wonder if I would like it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think about my grading. I don't want to spoil it now. Oh, one thing I wanted to ask you was, what did you think about when so Kyodai Ken is practicing this death move on this dummy.
Yeah.
And Bruce finds the dummy later, and he finds the soft spot. And he's like, oh, I never thought that it would have been right there. And, of course, the soft spot is right in the middle of your chest. Because later on, he's fighting Kyodai Ken, and Kyodai Ken does the move. Luckily, Bruce once again uses a tea tray to save himself, like Michael Keaton in Batman.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I thought it was hilarious too because the actual illustration of the death punch move just looked like two fingers going into like a butthole. So I was like, yeah, that'll do it. I mean,
yeah. There's one character that says, I know, I never would have thought that it would be there.
Yeah.
Like, that's the weak spot. Like, yeah, right smack in the middle of the chest. Yes. Right where the bat symbol is. Yeah, who would have thought it would be right there?
Yeah. Luckily, there's no, vital organs in that general area that could be possibly damaged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think I'd give this episode points for is there's a lot of Japanese spoken. And they're asking you to read a lot of, I think for a kids show, that's extremely rare. And I thought I think even Kevin Conroy had to speak some Japanese.
Yeah, he does a little bit, yeah.
In a couple of the scenes, too. And it's funny, because whenever he says a word, like, instead of saying the word samurai, like I just did, he'd be like, samurai. Like, he would definitely, like, Japanese it up a bit when he would say Japanese words. Yes. That was pretty fun.
Like, you mean like your white friends do when you're in Brooklyn ordering Mexican food?
Exactly.
I think they definitely put some extra oomph into certain aspects of this. I think it's like one script rewrite away from being a really great episode. I think everything else they brought, came to play, but I think it's just missing one piece, but that's not quite there.
That's fair. Honestly, I want to give this a 4, but I think I probably can go as high as a 3.5.
Yeah,
but I want to say 4, but I just can't. I don't think I can go 4.
Yeah, I think I'm going 3 with this one as well. What would you want to draw from it?
Oh, definitely the silhouette volcano fight scene.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Hey, tell me about what is your theory on flashbacks as they pertain to comic books? To give this more context, I could say, when I read, so my writing style comes from screenplays, and generally, as a general rule in screenplays, you don't go to flashbacks unless you really, really, really have to. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be a crutch that you use without thinking about it first. And there's a ton of great movies that won awards that have flashbacks, so I'm not opposed to them. But I feel like one of those challenges for me to learn was in comics, flashbacks is kind of our thing. The comic books make use of flashbacks all the time. Right. It is such a big part of our language. It took me a while before I learned how to break that rule with authority because I just thought that we weren't supposed to do it. How do you feel about flashbacks?
I don't love them generally. I think it depends on how you're going to handle it. Like if half of comic books is text, right? So you're going to be reading stuff, and you're going to have to just do a bunch of exposition at certain points,
right?
And doing A flashback with exposition on top of it is an easy way to make that very not boring to read, you know. But I think my feeling is kind of what the way I feel about these two episodes. I feel like if it's someone who is imparting information to someone else, and you're just illustrating that information through a flashback, sure. Mm-hmm. But I think that can be a really easy crutch to lean on, because then every time something happens, it's like, oh well, let's jump to a flashback and explain this for 3 pages. I don't love that stuff. I like it more when it's treated like like more of a part of the story than someone taking time to kind of grind everything to a halt.
Yeah.
And so they can tell a long form story,
Yeah. I as much as I don't like flashbacks, I've written them in almost every story I've ever done. And Punk Rock Jesus was sort of laid out like Forrest Gump, where you have an A plot and you had the flashbacks, but the flashbacks had their own timeline that had to go in their own beginning, middle, end, 3-act structure as well. Mm-hmm. And then you had to think of good reasons why these flashbacks would hit at certain points in the A plot. So, you can't just have a character read a journal and in the beginning of every comic you just read a few more pages of that journal. You should try to find compelling reasons that gets that main character back into the state of mind to learn the next scene flashback. Right. So it's really, really hard. And I'm not saying that I did it well. It's kind of an unnecessary. It's kind of a necessary evil that I've had to deal with, because I just tend to write complicated stuff that, I don't know, involves. One day I want to write a nice linear, very clean, John Wick type of story that doesn't involve a lot of complicated flashbacks. But I always seem to overcomplicate the scripts. Yeah,
I think the biggest trap that people can fall into writing flashback scenes is if you have the dialogue or whatever is in the caption being read just mimicking exactly what you're seeing.
Yeah.
That's when it's like, why are we even doing this? Those two things need to work in concert with each other, and let some of them do some of the work and let the other half do the rest of the work.
Right.
It's like watching a movie commentary track where the director is just explaining to you what's happening.
Right.
Which I'm shocked at how many of them do that, because it's friggin' it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, oh, and here's the part where he walks in. This is where Arnold walks in and he cuts his arm off. Yeah, you can see him cutting his arm off and revealing that he has a robot arm underneath.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, obviously that's what I'm watching on the screen.
Yeah, if you're going to do that, it better be a comedy.
Yeah, I think that stuff just, at least in movies, comes from the commentaries comes from them being unsure what to do with the space that they're given. Right. So they just feel like they have to talk. But as far as flashbacks and stuff, I hate that when it's like, and that's when I picked up the magic scepter, and it's just a picture of them picking up the magic scepter. It's like, okay. Yeah, you got it. Use this. My thought process about flashbacks in comics is they should be fairly limited, and you should use that limited space to the maximum potential, as far as telling a story.
I agree. We should do a separate podcast sometime talking about how, when you're the writer and the artist, you can sort of pull flashbacks off a lot better. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the assets that you and I have that a quote-unquote real writer doesn't have. So what I'm talking about is, I think a lot of writers will write flashbacks. They'll keep the dialogue consistent to what the panel description is. So you run into that problem you're complaining about, where you see a guy pick up a sword, and you're writing, so then I picked up a sword. And I think the reason that happens in comics is because the writer doesn't always know that the artist is actually going to draw what he says he's going to, what's in the script. So you want to cover your bases just by making sure. When you are writing and drawing your own shit, you know not to bother with the dialogue in that scene. Just show him picking up the sword. And if you want to have some voiceover, have him thinking about something that's completely unrelated. Now you've got like a scene that's working on 2 levels.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that when you write and draw your own shit, you can control that stuff much better than when you're just a writer.
Yeah.
I think there's a whole conversation we could have about that, because I have a whole list of things that I think when you're artist writers can do better than if you're just a writer that I think a lot of people just don't really think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe next time.
Yeah, we should definitely do like a like a separate episode talking about something like that, or we should just wait till the next terrible episode and then we can just cover that for a couple minutes and then talk about flashbacks the rest of the time.
Yeah, or I can tell you the story about how I banged some famous dude's stripper girlfriend.
Sure.
I don't really have that many stories. I'm not really a player. I don't have many of these. I don't know why they keep coming up.
Anyway. Yeah. I think I would draw. I would love to draw the volcano thing, but I would also. I think Batman in Japan in general would just be really cool.
Yeah.
Because there's so much cool stuff to draw in general in Japan, and putting Batman in there would just be, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I'm a 3, and you said you're like a 3.5.
Yeah, I wish it was a 4. Oh, I wish it was a 4, but no, it's not.
Well, I want to tell you, we're done with Day of the Samurai. We just did Moon of the Wolf, and before that we did Tiger. Next time, we're coming back to another person turns into an animal episode.
Jesus Christ.
Because apparently they wanted to do a bunch of those. Next time, we're going to be doing Terror in the Sky, which actually is a Man-Bat episode after they whiffed on that. And then the second one, however, the other one is Almost Got Him, which is, obviously a famous one. It's going to be a fun one to do.
Thank God. Oh, my God. Yeah, that's a top 10 for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you enjoy the show, thanks for listening. If you got any questions, you can shoot them over to us at battasspodcast@gmail.com, BATTASS podcast@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter at BATTASspodcast. That's at BATTASS podcast. And if you want to give us a rating or review on iTunes, or tell your parents about how much you enjoy it and how much you enjoy the irreverent stories that we tell.
Yeah. Say hi to your mom for me.
Yes. Say hi to all of your moms for us. All right, that's going to do it. We'll be back next time with Terror in the Sky and Almost Got Him. Thanks, guys.